Mark chapter 9, verse 35, sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all." Greatness. It was an argument that the disciples were having that prompted Jesus to say these words. On the road to a place called Capernaum, they were arguing among themselves about who is the greatest. This reminds us that Jesus' disciples had arguments and ambition. Later, when Jesus asked them what they were arguing about, they kept quiet. Perhaps they were embarrassed, ashamed of themselves for what they were arguing over. Notwithstanding their silence, Jesus turned this into a teachable moment. He taught his disciples what greatness means and used a child to give an object lesson. As is his way, Jesus often says things that contradict or cut across the grain of the way many individuals think. Many of the things that we find Jesus saying in the Gospels tend to go contrary to the way that we ordinarily think about things. And those who listen to Jesus soon discover how listening to him, how his teaching can rearrange their thinking and turn things upside down, which I have come to discover is really setting things the right side up. Because so many things are already upside down. And when we listen to Jesus and follow his teachings, what we discover is that he sets the wrong right. So what Jesus says in our text does not align with the typical or popular way of thinking about greatness. What Jesus says here today is a radical departure from the way many individuals view greatness. No doubt, as the disciples were arguing on the road to Capernaum, they were not thinking of greatness in the way that Jesus describes it in our text today. They were yet to learn, and Jesus taught them, that greatness means thinking of yourself last, not first. Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last. Here we have a wonderful quality that truly great people exhibit, that of humility. In the letter to the Philippians, we read, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. This attitude of valuing or preferring others above oneself is what ensures that those who aspire to be great or to lead do not abuse their power or authority. When you think of others first, that will be a safeguard against abuse of power and authority. The disciples were arguing about who is the greatest. Of course, there's a tendency among human beings to want to feel important. It is natural, my sisters and brothers, to strive after greatness, to grasp for power. The problem is when the motive is purely self-serving. So Jesus says, if you want to be first, if you want to be great, if you want to lead, you must be the very last of all. In other words, you must be willing to put the interests of others before your own. You must consider other selves before yourself. And that's not easy, since most of us like to consider our own interests before anything else or anyone else. The disciples had to learn, and Jesus taught them, that greatness means being a servant first. The word translated servant in today's text means one who executes the commands of another. That is what a servant is. One who executes the commands of another. Jesus wanted his disciples who had been arguing about greatness to understand that great people are called to serve. They're called to be servants. Being great does not mean lording it over others or being the one whom others serve. It's the very opposite, my friends. To be great is to be a servant. It is to recognize that one has a higher calling, or called by someone higher. And that call is to do good, to assist, to help, to support others as much as possible. As the disciples were arguing about who is the greatest, they were not thinking about what their greatness can do for others, but what it might do for them in terms of status, prestige, advantages. And that's not the way to think. That is what Jesus is teaching here. That greatness does not mean that we are looking for something for ourselves. It should always be about what good we can do for others. How can I serve my fellow human beings? And in his teaching, Jesus goes a little further to show his disciples that greatness means serving all, from the last to the first. And this is something that we should not miss. It's a very significant point that Jesus makes in today's text. It's one thing to consider oneself a servant. It is something else to see oneself as a servant of all. Yes, my friends, There's a way to serve, to do good, to offer assistance, to help out, but it is directed at a select few, at some, and not all, to the people we like or to the people who are like us. As Jesus sat with his disciples, he taught them that true greatness means being willing to serve all, everyone. It's not just serving family members and friends and those who agree with you, but even those outside the family, those outside your circle of friends. Accepting others no matter their station in life, and being willing to do good to all, from the last to the first. This, my friends, is the mark of greatness. Even to do good, even to serve those who might have hurt you, who might have wronged you, and not to overlook them, is what true greatness consists of. It is being like Joseph in the Old Testament, that even though his brothers meant him harm, he did not look at it that way. When he had an opportunity, he served them. He did good by them. So the child that Jesus took represents the least, those that have no influence, that are often overlooked and forgotten, those that can give nothing but need others to give them something. The weak, the powerless, they must be included. All must be the recipients of the service and of the good that we render or offer. So those who aspire to greatness and desire to lead others must show great acceptance and find their greatness in following the example of Jesus. It is told that Hudson Taylor was scheduled to speak at a large church in Melbourne, Australia. The moderator of the service introduced the missionary in eloquent and glowing terms. He told the large congregation all that Taylor had accomplished in China, and then presented him as our illustrious guest. Taylor stood quietly for a moment and then opened his message by saying, "Dear friends, I am the little servant of an illustrious master. I am the little servant of an illustrious master." Sisters and brothers, that is the right attitude. And I pray that we will all go from here remembering that we are servants of a great master, and that our greatness is found when we put ourselves last of all, when we prefer others. Oh, think of what a wonderful world this would be if we all had that attitude. This would be a wonderful world indeed. So let us listen now as our choir sings for us